Welcome to today's live on ServiceNow webinar. We're going to be focusing on how to improve your service catalog with process mining here today. Quick introductions. My name is Dan Grady. I'm part of the process mining product management team. Today, I've got a special guest here with me. Tosin, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Thanks, Dan. I'm Tosin, and I'm the outbound product manager for Service Catalog.
Thanks, Tosin. And we also have two other members of the process mining product management team here with us today, Damien Pascal and Raz Parpia. They're going to be helping support the Q&A and the chat dialogue here today. Logistically, as you have questions and questions arise, please put them in the Q&A section of the webinar. They'll do their best to answer them throughout the session, and then Tosin and I will circle back later on towards the end and answer any relevant questions live. Those of you that have attended other process mining webinars in the past, you know that we always like to start with this quote. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And we like the quote because it usually aligns to the reason that we've all gathered, learn a little bit more about the ServiceNow platform, take that knowledge, go back, apply it, get more value out of your investment with ServiceNow. And it also aligns to one of the solutions we'll be talking about here today, process mining, which is designed to help us x-ray the different business processes we have running in our organization and start to show us where and how we can do better for everyone involved with them. What we're going to be covering here today, well, based on the feedback we've gotten from a lot of the other webinars we've done, we're going to take turns giving a quick 101 on both the service catalog and process mining, and then we'll dive into the better together portion of the session. We'll run through a bunch of use cases for process mining as it pertains to the service catalog. Then we'll dive into a demonstration, and we'll look at kind of how to use process mining to keep your request processes you've rolled out optimized, but we'll also look at how you can use process mining to identify potentially new service catalog requests. And then lastly, there's no shortage of additional resources out there for you to learn more about process mining on the ServiceNow community. We don't want you to have to go through them all, although we would love it if you did. It'd take you a couple of months at this point. So we're going to point you at some of the more relevant content for those of you that might be just getting started with the solution. With that, I'm going to pass it over to my friend Tosin here to give you a quick little rundown of a Service Catalog 101.
Thanks, Dan. So I'm going to start with a refresher of Service Catalog and just give you an overview of Service Catalog and the request management process. So when we talk about Service Catalog, what we really mean is it's just exactly as the word sounds like. It's a structured list. It's a catalog, and it contains all of the services that an organization offers to its users, and that can be like internal users or like customers of the organization. So just think of it as a digital storefront where anyone in the business can browse, you can select, and then you can request the services that you need. It's just like shopping online. For most of us, this means IT services. But the concept applies just the same to HR, customer service, same concept really. And the catalog item, they might include things like ordering a new laptop, requesting access to an application, booking a meeting room, or even onboarding a new employee. The key point is that service catalog is not just for IT. So if you're in HR, your catalog might offer services like benefits enrollment or payroll support. If you're in customer services, it could be about product returns, like warranty requests, but the mechanism is the same. It's usually a clear, organized menu of what you have available so the users can know exactly where to go to when they need to request something and how to get it. Now, when someone places an order from the catalog, that's where request management comes in. So request management is the process behind the scenes that takes those orders and makes sure they are fulfilled efficiently and consistently. So it's the engine that tracks every request from submission to completion, making sure nothing falls through the cracks and the users get timely updates along the way. So anything that can be ordered as a standalone service, whether it's a specific piece of hardware, software license, business processes like onboarding, you can consider that as a catalog item. And each of these items is defined in your service catalog with details of what's included, who owns the service, and how long the fulfillment should take, or any other costs involved. Next slide, please. Now, let's take a look at the hierarchy of records in request management. I think it's very important when we start thinking about like the process and how process mining comes in. So at the top, we have the overall request. So think of this as the container for everything the user is asking for in a single submission. For example, someone might request a laptop, a monitor, and access to software tool. And this can be separate requests or it can be all in one go. The request itself is typically overseen by what you call a service desk, and they maintain the overall responsibility, but they don't necessarily fulfill those items. So next, if you move one rung down the ladder, one rung down the ladder, so you have each individual thing the user is asking for. So you can think of it like a laptop, monitor, or software access, and these are separate requested items. So this can be assigned to different service owners or fulfillment teams depending on what's needed. So the hardware team might get the laptop, the software team takes care of the access request. And finally, for each requested item, there can be one or more service catalog tasks. These are the actionable steps that you assign to specific fulfillers. For instance, if you are setting up a laptop, it might involve tasks like imaging the device, installing security software, and physically delivering it to the user. So all of this are separate tasks. And this layered approach is very necessary because it allows us to support requests for multiple items at once. So each with its own workflow and a fulfillment path. It also means that different people or teams can be responsible for different parts of the overall request. And you see how this plays out when we go into the weeds of process mining. And this way, assignment and tracking can happen at a much more granular level. For example, if there's a delay in delivering the monitor, but the laptop is ready, we can see exactly where things stand and who is responsible for each part. Ultimately, the structure helps us to manage complex requests efficiently and nothing gets lost along the way. Next slide, please. Now, I wanted to give like a high level view of the basic request management process. Essentially, it's like this is the backbone of how services are delivered through your service catalog. It starts with a requester who selects one or more items from the service catalog. From here, the process can branch into two directions. If approval isn't needed, the request moves straight to fulfillment. If approval is required, it goes to the approver for review. The approver checks the request for eligibility. So we need to check, does this person actually have the rights to get access to what they're requesting for? And if it's rejected, the process ends and the requester is notified. But if it's then approved, the request moves forward to the fulfiller who completes the necessary tasks to deliver the service. Now, once all of these tasks are done, the request is closed. It's important to note that this is just a very basic representation. It's almost like a template for how requests should flow. In reality, each service can have its own unique process. Some may require multiple approvals, additional validation steps, or coordination between several teams. And we'll see some of those in the examples we'll provide later on about specific use cases for process mining when it comes to improving your service catalog. Now, the specific workflow for each service is determined when that service is added to the catalog. And capturing these details upfront is very crucial for smooth delivery. And this is where process mining becomes incredibly valuable. By analyzing the actual flow of requests, we can see where the process deviates from the ideal. We can spot bottlenecks or unnecessary steps, and we can continuously refine our workflows. Ultimately, this helps us so that every service, no matter how simple or complex, is delivered as efficiently and transparently as possible. Now, I'll hand it over to Dan to go over the basics of process mining.
And as Tosin just ran you through how the request process was designed, right? But he was just mentioning, like, how do we know that our requests are following the design path or the design process, or whether the process is running as efficiently as we expected? And this is, as he said, where process mining can help, right? Like with everything we do in life, whether it be a meeting like this one or a business process, when we design things, we have a vision in our head for how they should play out, right? And we design these processes, we design them for both completeness and efficiency to provide the best experience possible for as many people as possible. But then what happens is we roll them out and reality kicks in, and not all the work is going to be flowing through the optimal path. And that's going to have a negative impact on the experience both the requester is having as well as the people trying to deliver that service. This is where process mining can come in, right? For most organizations, seeing that reality so they can make the necessary adjustments and improvements is a very challenging situation. It's very manual, time consuming, costly exercise. What process mining does is it automates that ability to give us visibility into the reality of what's going on, showing us the ping pong between the different teams, the rework loops in the process, the things getting stuck waiting for approval for ungodly amounts of time. And now that we have this accelerated visibility into the reality of what's going on, that's supposed to speed up our ability to make the necessary adjustments or improvements to the process. Now, some people say, wait a minute, Dan, hold on. We already have a bunch of dashboards that give us visibility into how our processes are running. Like, how is this different? Well, those traditional dashboards and reports give us visibility into things like, how many requests are we working? Or how long is it taking to close those requests? Are we hitting our targets? And are we improving our cycle times? All super important questions that we have traditional dashboards to help us ask and answer. But one of the things that we've learned as we've done this over the years is that information tends to be one of the most addictive and contagious things out there. You give them a little bit and they always want more. So the first thing that happens when we give them visibility into the request processes using one of these dashboards is they have follow-up why questions about what they're seeing, like where is the process getting stuck? Where is the unnecessary rework? Where are they spending or wasting the most time? Which things are getting stuck waiting for approval for multiple days before they can even move forward? How much productivity are we losing because of that? These are all the types of questions that process mining allows us to start asking and answering. Essentially, we like to say that process mining is going to get us to the why behind our KPIs. And you're going to see a number of different examples from a request perspective today as how process mining helps us dig into our request process data and uncover opportunities. Just one real quick example on the screen here is we're using what we call a multi-dimensional map to give us a view into not just the requested item, but the tasks associated to those flows as well. Because if you think about it, while a report might give you visibility into the overall fulfillment time, if you really want to understand where you're leaking air from your process tires, you're going to want to be looking at this data, the data this way. Because this information, if you think about the two primary bottlenecks within a request process, you've got the approval step, and then you've got the fulfillment tasks themselves. They live in two different tables, and we're able to see that information here, right? Or how much time we're losing from an approval perspective versus how much time we're spending on the tasks themselves. Just to give you one quick real world example of a recent customer interaction, one of the things we like to do, and we'll show you how we do it here today, is look at the approvals that are taking longer than 2 days to get from requested to approved. And for this one customer, we found a specific item in which there was 727 of these requests that met that criteria in a given month, adding up to 7 years of time waiting for approval. The fulfillment tasks associated with those 727 requests only took 7 days. So 7 years of time waiting for approval for 7 days of actual work. And the real kicker is that 96% of those requests were being approved. Like, do we even really need that step? They thought not, remove that approval step, and now they reclaimed about a percentage of that 7 years of time waiting for approval each month. So Tosin's going to run you through a number of other use cases, but that's a real quick introduction to what process mining is and the type of visibility it can potentially provide. Tosin, why don't you dive into some of the more specific use cases that we think process mining can help when it comes to service catalog requests?
Sure, thanks, Dan. We've highlighted 6 different use cases you can think of when you look at your service catalog and how process mining can help you improve that your request management process. The first one that comes to mind is something Dan has mentioned earlier, and that's approval bottlenecks. And these are cases where the approval step is the bottleneck in the process. So we process mining, we can clearly see where requests are piling up, waiting for someone's sign off. Imagine a scenario where a simple equipment request sits in limbo for days or even weeks. Not because the work is complex, it's because it's stuck waiting for approval. It's not unique to any one department. Like this can be something with IT, it can be like an HR kind of request, and all these bottlenecks can happen like all over different units. And by identifying exactly where approvals are holding things up, we can streamline the process. For instance, we can start to automate like low risk approvals, so you can delegate authority and to keep things moving faster and reduce the frustration for everyone involved. The next one, next slide, please. The next one is rejections. So with rejections, this is where you are seeing a lot more rejections than usual. And the idea is to analyze those rejection patterns to improve your request outcome. So sometimes requests can get turned down more often than you expect, and it's not always clear why. For example, a request might be rejected because the information provided was incomplete, or perhaps it just did not match the available options in the catalog. And this can happen in any function. Again, so like I'll give some examples, like with travel bookings. You are requesting for setting like travel details that don't exist like in the actual booking page or booking site. You can think of like something around procurement as well. You're making a request for, say, like a laptop that doesn't exist, like a laptop model that doesn't exist any longer. That will be rejected, right? But we need to understand why. And by analyzing why and where these rejections occur, we can improve the instructions in the service catalog form, for example. And we can also like clarify catalog items. We can also adjust policies, and this will lead to fewer rejections and overall a smoother experience for both requesters and your approvers as well. Next one is multi-ops. This is an interesting one because I've seen this a lot. And this is where you have requests that will just keep bouncing between teams. It's interesting because you make a request, and typically you think of the process from a requester point of view. You just want to set an outcome. You're not concerned about what's happening within that black box. But then when you see requests that seem to travel endlessly between different teams before they get resolved, and it's unclear who exactly owns the request, or it can happen because the initial categorization is not specific enough. For instance, a request might start with IT, it gets handed over to, say, a facilities team, then it's routed back to another support group. And this is an example where it's happening between different teams. It can also happen between, say, for example, different teams within IT. So there's someone in the cybersecurity team, there's someone in governance team, and then it's like we don't like it's not clear exactly who should be addressing this specific request. And this kind of back and forth adds unnecessary delay, and it can be very frustrating for a requester. So process mining can help us to spot these patterns so you can clarify ownership. You can improve routing. You can ensure requests get to the right team the first time. And the next one is ambiguous requests. I mentioned multi-hubs my favorite one. I think this is actually what this I will call this my favorite one because it's bound to happen. So many times when you create your catalog item, we are creating them based on what we know now. It's hard to foresee all like give like all possible scenarios where for in terms of like a user's request, and that means you have requests that you have request types that you call like request something else, and that's what we call ambiguous requests. And the idea is a user is requesting for something. It does not exist in catalog item. They can't find what they're looking for. And so they resort to picking the request something else because that's there in your service catalog. And what then happens is they are making this request that's free text. It's not structured, and you require like a manual triage. Someone needs to go in, like read that request, understand exactly what that is. Thankfully, with Now Assist, some of that can be auto-routed depending on the contextual information that you can pick up from that text. But then that's like an extra layer of work that should not have existed in the first place. So by using process mining, one, we can track like how often this is happening. So if you don't know, like for example, as an organization, you can have a threshold and say we don't want to have like over 10% of requests as this kind of ambiguous request. So what exactly is wrong? Can we go into the weeds and understand? Should we create new catalog items? or have like clearer descriptions, or just create a new category so users can quickly find the right option, and this request can be routed automatically, reducing their need for manual work, or somebody going through, sifting through the catalog items, catalog requests to understand exactly who that request should go to, and speed up the response time. Next slide, please. Next is the longer to route than resolve, or what you call idle time. And sometimes think of this as when the time it takes to actually complete the request is far less than the time it takes spending, like the time it takes like waiting to be assigned or to be routed. I'll give an example. For a request for a password reset, it's a very simple task. It should typically take maybe 5 minutes, and someone just needs to, or maybe just a click of a button, really, to resolve. But then you find cases, and this is something you can uncover with process mining, where you have that kind of request waiting in a queue for hours or even days before someone picks it up and actually does that work. So this idle time is hard to visualize, like how much of like requests fall into this category if you don't use process mining. But once you identify it, it's easy to address this. Perhaps you can adjust your assignment rules, or create some kind of automatic process that just you don't need so we have to, you can sit back as a team and realize, do we need someone to actually be part of this step? Is this something that we can route automatically and make sure that we don't have this kind of requests coming? And the last one is self-service opportunities. And the idea is isolating low effort work that we can turn into automations or self-service options. So process mining is also great for finding opportunities to automate repetitive, low complexity tasks. So you can think of requests that come in like high volume but require very little effort. For example, you need to update contact information. These are kind of requests you have very high frequency, but doesn't really require like that much work from a fulfiller point of view. So providing standard documents, say through your knowledge base, for example, or just granting basic system access that allows the user to do that. And so it can help speed up that process. So with process mining, you can identify these kind of patterns, and you can create self-service options, or just automate that fulfillment. So you free up time for your fulfillers to focus on more complex tasks and give users instant results for this routine kind of request. Now I'll pass it back to Dan to go over like an actual demo.
Awesome. Thank you, Tosin. I see there's a number of questions coming in, so that's great news. I'm just gonna click on something over here, so hopefully it doesn't time out on me real quick, and then we'll go back. So let's look at some of those use cases live best we can with the data that we have. The first one I'm going to start with is the last one that Tosin just mentioned. Like, how do we identify new or future potential self-service options or catalog items, right? Through the incidents that are coming in. And we're going to dig into this incident data that we have here, and we're going to use the process mining workspace to help us dig into that data. There's a lot of stuff that we can cover here today. We don't have time to go into all the different details. We want to just focus on those specific use cases. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over into the analyst workbench to start digging into our incident data. And just for those of you that have not seen process mining before, just so you can see in this example here, what we're doing in the analyst workbench is we're looking at how the work is moving from step to step or state to state in the process, and the volume and velocity between those different transitions. And we can use this data to, dig into this data in lots of different ways, getting down to the detailed records, looking at the work notes associated to around different transitions, clustering the short descriptions and the descriptions, or doing some root cause analysis. One of the unique things that process mining allows us to do, though, is use the different steps in the process and the volume and velocity between those transitions to start to narrow down specific use cases. So if we think about that use case that Tosin just mentioned, like if we're looking for self-service or automation opportunities, let's look for work that's not taking us a lot of manual effort to resolve. So we can say, show me all the work that goes into an in-progress state, and then is directly followed by the state of resolved. I only care about the last occurrence of that, but I only care about work that's, let's say, maybe taking between 2 minutes and 30 minutes to make that jump. So we can isolate it based on that. It's completely configurable, as you can see. Some people like to use 2 to 15. Some people like to use 2 to an hour. And the idea behind this is, hey, look, if it's taking less than 2 minutes to go from in progress to resolve, you've probably already automated it. But if it's taking longer than 2 minutes, but less than 15 or 30, guess what? You haven't automated it already, but it's not taking a human a heck of a lot of effort to solve this problem. There's got to be some self-service opportunities in that subset of the data. So in this case, what we've done is we've narrowed it down to those 770 incidents that came in that took longer than 2 minutes, but less than 15 minutes to resolve. So you can see the breakdown of that time here with this histogram. And then what we can do is we can start to use these breakdowns on the left-hand side of the screen to slice and dice these very short or low effort incidents by, let's say, assignment group, category, any way that you've structured your data. But if we're looking for future or new self-service opportunities, we probably want to ignore the ones that came in via self-service and portal, but focus in on the ones that coming in via different channels like email and phone, and just narrow it down to those. So now we've narrowed it down to those 216 that came in via email or phone that we might not have an existing self-service option for. And now we've got these, and we can dig into these a little bit deeper. You always have the ability, because you are in the platform, to drill down to the detailed records themselves, or you can run some clustering to harvest some of the insights from the gold that lives in the unstructured data, like the short descriptions and the descriptions. And anytime you click on one of these investigative things, you're going to get this little note that potentially that a job is running. Once that job is done running, you can pick it up over here on the right-hand side of the screen, and we'll start to see that I've got a whole bunch of different things here. People trying to log in via VPN, or I've got people that are sending in or making phone calls and sending in emails that are just trying to update their email address in their profile. Like, that's totally something that we should have a catalog item for. And now that we've identified a potential opportunity, what do we do next? Right here from the process mining workspace, you have this ability to create what is known as a continual improvement initiative or link to an existing one. Or if you happen to be using Automation Center to capture, track, and prioritize all your future automation requests, we get a linkage here, right? That's just one quick example of how to use process mining to help you identify potential future self-service or opportunities or catalog items. Now let's jump over here and start to look at, like, once we've got those catalog items created, like, how do we use process mining to make sure that those request processes stay healthy? So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up this software requests process mining project. And I'm just going to kind of give you a quick little high-level overview of what we're looking at on this summary and insights page here. What we've done in this case is we've mined 2,900 software requests. They've taken 25 different routes to get to closure. On average, they're taking 5 days to get there. With every process mining project, we immediately generate 2 visualizations. One is going to be a closure time trend. The other is going to be a histogram giving us the distribution of those closure times. In addition to those insights, and I just need to move my little Zoom bar here, we also present you with some improvement opportunities out of the gate. Like, some of you might be saying, man, that process map looks awesome, but guess what? I'm not really sure where to begin with that. Well, that's what these improvement opportunities are meant to do. And they come in 2 flavors, rule-based and automated, and they're designed to help jumpstart the analysis that we're doing inside of our process data. So here we can see that we've got some rule-based ones identifying situations where some requests are going directly from an open to a closed state with no approval steps in between. We've got some situations here where we're identifying some long approvals, and I'll show you another way to dig into that data. We've got some automated ones looking for slow transitions or extreme durations in the process. Like, the rule-based ones allow us to look for specific scenarios that we've, hypotheses that we want to test for. And then the automated ones just use process patterns to look for rework loops in the process, things ping-ponging between different teams, or where there's slow transitions or really long transitions in the process. And they give us details about the number of records that meet the criteria. And in addition to that, the most important number is the total inefficiency number, giving us the magnitude of the potential opportunity. So in this case here, there's 69 years worth of time packaged up in these cases or requests that met this long approval criteria or threshold that we set for ourselves. And then at any point when we see something interesting, we always have the ability right from here to drill directly into the visualized process map for just that subset of the data. Now, in this case here, I want to show you a couple of different things. And just to give you a sense of what we're looking at on the process map here, we've added 3 different tables to this visualization. The first one that we're looking at, the main part of the process, is the requested item itself. But as Tosin laid out in that architecture, right, there's a couple of different steps. You've got the item itself, and then you've also got the subtasks related to that. We're able to look at those 2 things side by side on this one. And then there's a very important piece of a lot of request processes, which is the approval step. And we're able to look at those specific approvals or the items that have approvals, and then kind of some of the aspects of the approval process itself in this view over here. This just gives us end-to-end visibility into all the different things affecting the process. And for the requested item table, if I wanted to, what I can do is I can come over here and I can kind of make it a little bit messier so you can start to see things that are bouncing back and forth or in and out of the in progress state, or going from pending back to in progress, and all the different rework loops that are involved in a process. We're able to see that with process mining as well. One thing that I do want to show you here is the first use case, as Tosin mentioned, kind of looking at a breakdown of whether things are being approved or rejected. And one way to look at kind of the percentage of the breakdown of approvals versus rejections for any given item is I can come over here to this breakdown over here for the requested item table, and I can pick the item that I want to focus in on. And maybe I want to focus in on these 129 Smartsheet software requests here and narrow it down to just those. And then once I do that, I'm going to bring this guy back over here. Sometimes these little boxes bounce around on us a little bit. And then zoom in again and expand that out. I probably should have expanded it first. Oh, there we go. Let's expand our item table out a little bit more. So now what I can do is I can click on this requested node of the map. So we can see here that these requests come in, they get opened up. At the same time they get opened, an approval is requested. If I click on this, I've got this records to option that gives me a breakdown of, hey, of those that came in, 107 of them that when the approval got requested got approved, 88%. And on average, it took 4 days from that request to the approval to happen. And then only 12% in this case, 14 of them got rejected, and it took 5 days. So I can actually see a distribution of the approvals and whether they're being approved or rejected. Right, that's one way to start analyzing your approvals that come in for a given requested item. I'm going to clear these out. And I mentioned earlier, right, we want to start, in many cases, focusing on those long approvals, the approval bottlenecks. So how do we do that? Well, just like we did when we were looking for future self-service items, we can use the steps in the process to do that. So I can come in here and I can say, hey, show me all the situations where I've got my state approval was requested. And then that was eventually followed by, let's say, state approval was approved. But I only care about situations in which the approval is taking, let's say, longer than 2 days. I'm just going to put 2 days in here and 200 here and hit add constraint and then hit apply. And then this is going to narrow it down to, I think, about 230 or so situations, or 260 actually, in which I have approvals that are taking quite a bit of time. In fact, if you look at this, there's 8 years of total time for just these 250 going from requested to approved here. So 8 years worth of time waiting for approval. And if we start to look at some of the fulfillment times here after it was approved, right, and moves in, we got 4 hours there, and then 9 months here. So 8 years for 9 months worth of work. And then just like we did before, I can start to use these breakdowns to see if there's any specific items that these long approvals line up to. And here's my good friend Smartsheet again. Look at the average duration of these Smartsheets versus the other ones on the list. So maybe I want to focus in on those. And I can narrow it down to just those situations for Smartsheet, the 26 that have really long approvals. And dig into these. And again, now for Smartsheet, in just these 26, what do I got? I've got 1 year of time waiting for approval, and the actual fulfillment time here is 2 days worth of actual work, right? Pretty crazy. The other thing that I want to point out here is if I want to look at these approvals, I've got breakdowns on the approval table as well. And one key thing that we always focus on is the approval source. Like, where is the approval actually taking place? Typically, we give our employees multiple options to make an approval, whether it be via desktop, UI, mobile, or email. And what's interesting here is this: look at the average duration for approvals that are approved via email versus desktop and the mobile UI, significantly shorter. And that might be something we want to dig into. Like, if we have these other options to approve things like the mobile and the desktop, maybe we need to promote them more, or maybe we need to do a better job making sure people pay attention to, since they seem to respond to the email approvals quicker, focusing on letting them know that these approvals can be solved via email or approved via email. One of the things you're not seeing in this list here is the approved by, which is a very common breakdown, but I didn't want to point any fingers or call anybody out live in this demonstration today. But if you wanted to look at the people that are better at approving versus not, you could also add that as a breakdown. So that's the way to look at approvals. Just to kind of call this out or point this out, if we wanted to dig into the rejections, Tosin mentioned that's a very common use case as well. We can totally do that here by coming to this approval table, just clicking on the arc from approval to rejected, saying investigate, and filtering on that transition. And now it's going to narrow it down to just my items that have rejections on them. And if I wanted to start looking at those items themselves, I can do that to see if there's certain items that have higher rejection rates than others, like this cloud capacity analytics one here, and focusing on those if I wanted to do that. So just some ways to start using the process mining map to do some slicing and dicing of kind of approval bottlenecks or rejection scenarios. All right, now let's look at kind of the request something else, or I forget what Tosin called this use case, but the kind of open-ended requested items. And this is something that I think is, Tosin, you came off mute. What are we calling this one again?
Ambiguous request.
The ambiguous requests. So in this scenario here with this project, we're going to focus in on a very specific item, the requested for the request for something else item, right? In the last project, we were looking at a certain subset of catalog items, all our software requests. But in this scenario, we're focusing in on a very specific request, the request for something else. And depending on the type of analysis you're going to do, you might want to focus on a specific request because that process is aligned, or you might want to look at a larger set of the catalog. It just depends on what questions you're trying to answer. And just like you saw before we dig into these 16,000 requests for something else that came in, we've got our summary and insights page to help guide us through that data. In this case, instead of looking at how things are moving from state to state, we're going to be looking at how these requests that are coming in, the tasks associated with them, are bouncing from group to group. And I can see here that 32% of the tasks aligned to these requests for something else touched multiple teams. And there's 57 years of potential time packaged up in the work hopping from team to team in this scenario, or in these scenarios. And then right from here, I can drill down into the visualized process map for just those tasks bouncing between multiple teams. I'm just going to expand this out so you can see this map now. All right, in this case here, again, we're looking at one very specific item in our catalog, the request for something else, or the ambiguous request. We've got 5,200 or 32% of those requests that touched multiple, or who have tasks that touched multiple assignment groups as they were being fulfilled. And on average, these 5,200 are taking 2 weeks. So whereas before we were looking at how the work was moving from state to state in the process, now we're looking at the volume and velocity in which the work is moving from group to group to fulfill these different catalog tasks that are there. And one of the more popular ways to dig into these multi-hop scenarios is to use this variation analysis component. All right, and what the variation analysis allows us to do is, we got a big spaghetti ball of different routing that's going on here, is look at all the individual routes that work is taking to get to closure. So I can see here, I've got these 66 that are going from the apps L3 CRM team to the apps L2 CRM team. So that's an interesting scenario. It was initially sent to a level 3 team and then was downgraded to a level 2 team. So we might want to dig into those. And they are taking 6 months and 3 weeks on average to get to closure. So that might be an area of interest to us. If I come in here and I sort this by, let's say, the most records or the highest volume routes, all right, and start cycling through the different route combinations for this work, One of the things that I'll get to is I've got these 82 here that are going from the apps L2 IT apps team to Cloud COE to DTS CCO DevOps team. And that seems weird. There's 3 teams involved. And anytime we see 3 teams involved in servicing something that's coming in via the service catalog, that's an indication potentially that there's a better way. There's got to be a better way to route that work. Because if I start looking at this, I can see, all right, there's 6 days worth of time packaged up in this first team getting it to the second team. Then that second team getting it to the third team. There's 3 months worth of total packaged up in time packaged up for these 82 tasks. And then, this team looks like they're doing the bulk of the work. They're coming in via structured source. There's got to be a way to get them directly to the right place, right? And if we start to dig into these records, I mean, I'm not going to go all the way through the list, but if I start to dig into these, you'll notice they're just fulfillments for cloud management. And if I dug into the records, which I won't do on the recording here, you'll see that many of them are just asking for additional approval from a manager. That is totally something that we should be able to build into the process and maybe help streamline this work getting to the right place the first time or avoiding having to go to these other places. So just a different way to start looking at those ambiguous requests and potentially putting some more structure around them to streamline the routing through the organization, freeing time up for teams to be handling more appropriate type of work for that specific group. All right, so we've looked at a couple of different examples of how you can use the process mining's workspace to dig into your process data, but now some of you are probably saying, this looks amazing, Dan, but how hard is it to get started with this solution? And the good news is it's not hard at all. The more appropriate question you should be asking is how easy is it to do? So let's look at how we create one of these process mining projects. And we'll hit create new project here from the process mining workspace. And we'll give it a name. We'll call it live on nav. And we'll pick our table. In this case, we're going to start with that requested item table. And any table that has auditing turned on is going to be available to us in this list to mine. We're going to start with requested item and say create project. Once we pick the table we want to mine, there's only a handful of things that we need to do. The first is we need to add some filter conditions to narrow down the data set. When we talk about process mining, this is just like building a report, by the way. We typically like to focus on work that has completed the process. Could you mine open work? Of course you could. But if we're trying to improve a process, let's look at work that's went all the way through the process. One of the ways to get closed work is say active is false. We might also want to add a time period. Maybe we want to look at items that have closed on the last month. So we can come in here and say closed on the last month. Zoom people keep getting in my way here. And then maybe we want to look at a certain subset of our items. So we could come in here and we just add another filter for, let's say, item. Maybe I should just search that list, say item, and then we can walk over to maybe the catalog or category. And let's just look for software items, software and applications, let's say. And that's going to narrow it down in this case to, it looks like 960 software application items that closed in the last month, and we'll hit save. And then the only other thing we really have to do is add a couple of different activities. We looked at how these are activities or things that are changing during the process. We looked at examples of state changes. We looked at examples of assignment group changes. So let's just add a state change here. And you know what, for requested items, maybe we want to put that approval step on the main table itself. So we'll just look at approvals as well. And we'll hit save. So now on that map, the nodes that you saw on the analyst workbench, we're going to have both the state changes as well as the approval changes. And then, of course, we're going to want to have some of those handy dandy breakdowns to slice and dice the process map by. Maybe we want to have assignment group. And let's just add the item in this case. We'll hit save. And then if you remember on those maps, we had different boxes, right? If we wanted to look at kind of different aspects of the process, right? We could just look at the requested item steps and state changes and approval steps. But maybe we want to have that subtable for the approvals, right? That's a very common use case. So we've added a single toggle to add that child table here. And it sets a couple of things up for us, like our activities and our breakdowns. And you know what, for this one, though, we might want to add that kind of approval source. Remember the desktop, the mobile, the email as one of the breakdowns. And maybe in this case, we want to add the individual approvers so we can start seeing who our culprits are that are taking a long time to approve things. So we've configured this. And then last thing we could do, remember those awesome improvement opportunities, the rule-based ones and the automated that help jumpstart our analysis? Well, we can add those to this project as well. We give you some of those as part of content packs that you can simply apply to a project. Or they're very easy to add your own for your specific use cases. So maybe we want to come over here and we want to look for slow transitions in the process. So let's add a slow transition detector. Slow transition, we'll give it a name. And then we want to look for slow transitions. Let's look before it on the approval step of the process to see if it'll identify any approvals that are taking a lot longer than the typical approval process. And we'll say performance, and we'll hit configure, and we'll say save and exit. And that's how easy it is to add one of your own improvement opportunities to help jumpstart your analysis. A couple of clicks and away we go. And at this point, we're done. We come in here, we say review and mine. It's going to give you a summary of all the things that you configured. You're going to say mine project, and you're going to hit the mine button. And what happens now is it's going to go out. It's going to harvest the relevant audit log data from your instance. It's going to take that data, pass it off to the machine learning infrastructure to do the heavy duty number crunching. So there's no impact on the performance of your instance. And then it's going to spit the finished model back in. Or not. This usually takes anywhere from a couple 30 seconds to a couple of minutes. We don't have the time to wait for it today, so I'm just going to cancel it. But I wanted you to see kind of the process it takes to create one of these projects. Process mining, every now and then we get asked, like, what does it take to implement this? This is not an implementation. It's just something you're going to turn the plugin on and start using. For most of our customers, they're able to start finding opportunities to improve their processes, whether it be service catalogs or something else, in the first hour in which they've got the plugins activated. It's not a heavy duty lift to get started. And most of our customers, I would say all, already have the skills to do what I just showed you how to do there. All right, so we looked at a couple of different ways you can use the process mining workspace to slice and dice your request data. There's lots of more ways that you can dig into that data, but we don't have time to cover them all here today. And there's lots of other use cases. We're specifically focused on the request process, but there's lots of common use cases or types of analysis that customers use process mining for across the different workflows, whether it be incidents, HR cases, customer service cases, doing things like on-hold reason analysis, that multi-hop analysis we just looked at, looking for automation opportunities or potential opportunities for AI agents. Looking for situations in where work is being recategorized or the CIs are constantly changing. There's lots of different use cases that we could use process mining for. We've documented these on the process mining community in something, or the ServiceNow community in the process mining product hub, in something we call the process mining use case series. So if you're interested in digging into these different use cases, search up that process mining use case series. In addition to that, if you're sitting there going, man, this process mining stuff is absolutely incredible, I want to get started immediately. Well, if you're upgraded to Xanadu, you will have in your instance what we call process mining evaluation projects. Just to give you a little taste of what process mining could do for you. So in the Xanadu release, we've activated process mining in every single customer instance, and we've given you a small little process mining evaluation project for incident. It'll allow you to mine the last 7 days of closed incidents up to 3,600 incidents and give you the ability to do a couple of different use cases inside of there. So in Xanadu, you get that incident project. When you upgrade to Yokohama Patch 2, we add 2 additional evaluation projects, one for customer service case, one for HR case, with the same constraints of closed in the last 7 days, up to 3,600 records. You can run these projects as much as you want, but you're always going to be looking at the last 7 days of work up to 3,600 records. And we just recently ran a webinar as a team to help you understand how to use those projects and do some detailed analysis inside of them. But we've also got a quick little how-to tutorial videos out there on the community. So if you search up how to use the process mining evaluation projects in your instance, you'll find these quick little 5-minute videos that walk you through how to do things like the multi-hop analysis, look for idle time, or look for those self-service or future catalog items or automation opportunities. And there's these 5-minute videos across incident project, the HR case project, as well as the customer service case project. All right. If you got other questions, please get them in. So additional resources. And there's tons of other things out there to help you learn more about process mining. One is there is a now learning course called Process Mining Essentials. It's about 90 minutes self-paced, but there's a hands-on lab component to that. So if you don't want to use the evaluation projects in your instance and you want to kind of learn, get more hands-on in terms of creating projects, I would check out that Process Mining Essentials course. There is a community forum product hub for process mining. We put a lot of information out there. Anytime we hear something new or we think there's a new use case or a customer brings something up, within a week, we usually have that content posted to the community in some sort of educational or recorded fashion. So if you're not following the process mining product hub on the community and you're interested in this topic, I highly recommend you go there. One of the first resources that you will find in that product hub is this guide to getting started. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of content out there. If you're just getting started, where do you start? This guide to getting started kind of acts as a curriculum. It'll walk you through a quick little demonstration. It'll kind of get you to a recording on how to create your first projects. It'll get you to a recording on how to use that analyst workbench and all the different ways to slice and dice your process data. And then lastly, it will lead you to the use case series to help inspire you around how you might want to think about applying process mining in your world. We do host regular Process Mining Academy sessions, so a once a month type of session where we do deep dives into different areas. Roz just hosted last week a session focused on process mining as it relates to CSDM. Damien hosted one recently looking at kind of how to use the guided setup to create your first project. So there's lots of different Academy sessions that do deep dives. They're all recorded. I think the last one we just posted is Process Mining Academy number 36. So if you're interested in learning more and you have specific topics that you want to learn more about, I would check out that Academy. There's lots of different areas to dig in. For the person asking about linking or exposing process mining through dashboards, go check out a few of those Academy sessions. There's more than one of them out there that focuses on that topic. The use case series I've mentioned as well. You can just search up process mining use case series. And then lastly, once a month, we host an office hours here in the community. It's more of an open forum. Come bring your questions. We'll do our best to answer them live. If not, we'll turn it into a blog post if we don't have the answer right then and there for you. But that's something we host monthly. I think the one for this month is coming up this Thursday. If you want to register for that, Roz and some other folks from the team will be there to kind of answer your questions. For those that are attending Knowledge, there are a number of different process mining sessions at Knowledge. Some of them are full already, but some of them are not. So if you're interested and you're attending, here are some of the sessions in which we'll be talking about process mining. We'll have a roadmap and strategy session on Wednesday. Our own Now on Now team, who uses process mining extensively, is going to be doing a session on how they're using process mining on agentic AI use cases. So how, for those processes in which AI agents are handling a bulk of the work, they're mining that data, looking for inefficiencies in how the AI agents are working. One of our customers, Cigna, is going to be sharing their story with process mining, how they got started, some of their initial findings, and how they're scaling it in their organization. And then there is a hands-on lab that will walk through kind of how to use that workspace, the summary and insights page, and kind of create your first project there. So lots of opportunities to learn more about process mining at Knowledge. All right, last chance for romance. Any additional questions that have come in while we were just going through those additional resources? I'm not seeing any. Roz, Damien, anything else that came in?
Nope, I think we're good, Dan. Great session.
Awesome. Well, Tosin, I want to thank you for partnering with us on this process mining and service catalog webinar. You did a fantastic job. Welcome to the process mining family.
Thanks, Dan.
Damien, Roz, as always, appreciate your support in the Q&A portion of the session here. And for those, I'll just check one more time to see if there's any additional Q&A. Doesn't look like it. Just want to thank you all for attending. Look forward to catching up with those of you that will be at Knowledge, and we look forward to seeing you on future Process Mining Academy, live on ServiceNow, or office hours events. With that, happy mining, everyone.